So why are Synology's NAS hardware always seem to be comparatively lower compared with other devices? Well, hello and welcome back. I've been pulling an all-nighter with a bunch of NASs here, but I thought while I'm waiting for all of these things to finish doing their job, I was going to answer a question I saw in the comments, hence today's video. Namely, why are Synology's hardware specs typically lower than most of their competitors? They're still one of the biggest brands in NAS, and dare I say, for a number of you, they do still hold the top spots. But so many of you, when you're about to buy a NAS device, balk ever so slightly when you look at the internal hardware specs and you see that the CPUs or the RAM quantities or the drives supported, all the internal and external connections seem less than typical PC builds or than hardware rivals such as QNAP or maybe ones lower down the chain like ASUS, Thecus and more. Well, there are a few reasons why Synology have done this. The information I'm going to talk in this video comes from several sources. One, straight off the bat, it comes off a lot of experience I've got in NAS, several years talking directly with brands and of course the trade shows with hands-on hardware. Secondly, a number of these answers come directly from Synology themselves because I've asked them about this, and a number of you out there in interviews or on other online websites, not just my own, have online websites, all websites are online. All these resources, all of them Synology, seem to give the same answers. So what I thought I would do while I'm waiting for all these devices to boot up is make this video just to address this question. So why are Synology's NAS hardware always seem to be comparatively lower compared with other devices? Well, first and foremost, longevity. A number of the CPUs, the RAM, and the hardware devices you see, and you see the chassis not changing a great deal, is to do with longevity. NASs are going to be on for a great deal of time, days, weeks, months, and in some cases years on end, with never truly being powered down for any extended length of time. This can be incredibly detrimental to internal hardware, CPU, memory, and of course motherboards. It's for this reason that we see a number of NAS devices arriving from Synology with CPUs that are geared a little bit more towards efficiency and long-term output without reaching highs that can damage a CPU over constant use, and are creating what is perceived to be quite a bottleneck on those CPUs. Probably one of the most argued ones is one of Synology's Plus series CPUs, their use of the Atom series. They're up to the C3538, which I know a number of you out there are not huge fans of. But that's because we look at it with a PC brain or powerhouse or a graphically enabled frame of mind, where we want a CPU that can give us a great deal of output. And the Atom just doesn't seem on paper to give us that, but it is designed with longevity in mind. And I know a number of you are going to put comments down there about the previous iteration of the Atom. I look forward to talking to you about that in the comments. The second reason for a lot of the hardware choices from Synology is to do with their software focus. Synology have always been a brand that are heavily geared towards software over firmware, software over hardware. Their software, they've got the largest selection of proprietary first-person apps for both home and business users on their NAS platform. Their nearest rival, of course, is the likes of QNAP, who have a huge number of apps available that are made by QNAP themselves, but even they would have to admit that they have a smaller focus on proprietary firstware applications than Synology. With QNAP, you can get a great deal of applications from QNAP and third parties to work on their systems, whereas Synology have tried their hardest to look at the most important apps that people need, and they've created their own variants. Their collaboration tools I've mentioned in other videos, such as Synology Office, which is their alternative to Google Docs, Synology Chat, their alternative to WhatsApp and Skype, Active Backup Sync is their alternative to much paid-for premium services of large-scale server backup, Synology Moments for their photo recognition and recall software, alternative to Google, of course, Synology Drive, their alternative to Dropbox, Google Drive, that one portal access point. The list goes on and on with email, calendar clients, and more and more. The reason for this is simply that they want their software to be the thing that people use, not use their NAS for third-party devices. And the software focus has led to, when you buy a Synology NAS, for you know, this is again purely estimating myself, but for every £100 you spend, I'm willing to bet a much significant higher and more significant percentage went towards the software and research and development than paying for the actual hardware inside that device. And that can obviously lead to the hardware inside, to keep that price point, you know, attractive and affordable, can lead to the hardware suffering. The third reason for Synology using lower spec hardware is to do with simplicity. The simplicity of that hardware across their ranges. If you do look at Synology's range of devices, you will see that even if you look at the currently available range of Synology NAS, and I'm going to remove the top rack mount spec stuff, I'm going to keep it to anything under about £2,500. You'll look at that and you'll probably only see about 5 CPUs, and again, what that is to do with presumably mass production technique, but also for simplicity. Now, QNAP, again, I'm going to be making these comparisons, have a huge number of CPUs on offer. They've got a whole bunch of Realtek CPUs, a whole bunch of Intel CPUs, a whole bunch of AMD CPUs, a whole bunch of Marvel CPUs, and they've had to cater their software experience accordingly across them. Also, when you buy a QNAP NAS, it can get very confusing sometimes for someone who's not too technical to be able to choose one model where they've listed 12 different versions of the same device, because they've changed the CPU or changed the memory or changed the ports, and Synology have sort of stepped away from that and given simplicity. The majority of their devices are available in at most 2 to 3 versions, and often you can never change that CPU. It's normally a different kind of memory or maybe a port on the rear, or a number of bays of course. But simplicity is another reason for Synology going for that, not to make lesser hardware, but choosing CPUs that can befit an entire range of devices. Now, the last reason kind of brings us back to that issue of software. I say issue, it's a factor. Now, Synology, because they have geared so much of their R&D and development of their brand and their product on that software, the result is they've got significantly more focus on that software and how it plays out on those fewer CPUs across the devices. And the result is that a Synology software such as DS Video or Video Station, when compared with something like Plex, will utilize significantly less internal hardware than that third-party app, because they've geared it, they've tweaked it, they know exactly the platform it's going to be on, they know exactly what their limitations are and the way they can eke that last little bit of power and utility and efficiency out of that hardware. And that is for me, one of the main reasons that Synology use comparatively lower hardware than a number of their rivals, because they focus so much on their first party applications, which, you know, to their credit are excellent. Because they focus so much on that software, it means they can get the most out of the hardware, so they don't need to have a bigger CPU or a more powerful CPU. I mean, again, I wish they had an i7, but never mind. But that's the main reasons why. Longevity, software focus, simplicity, and getting the most out of that hardware. I hope you found this useful. I'm going to record a few more videos today while I wait for these devices to synchronize together for my other content. But I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, or you've got any questions, or maybe you want to argue the point, go down to the comments below and let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.